Good day, everybody. Welcome back to part dose of our unfortunate having to look at this thing. And I mean, I don't have to, but I thought it'd be a thing of interest to furries, as well as things, especially since given the last time we talked about this, we talked about Vanity Fair and how it treated furries in the early 2000s, and how their pieces treated this burgeoning fandom, this fandom that was basically getting off the ground at that point in public spaces, to the point where they covered a convention of 400 people, a small convention by the name of Midwest Fur Fest. If you didn't see that previous video, please go ahead and view my channel and go back to the previous video. And obviously, I'm going to be making a playlist of this as well. So go to the previous in that playlist as well. That being said, what we're going to talk about now is, well, what about Furry in those Epstein files? Was there anything of note in those files? I'm going to give you the long of the short of it, or the short of the long of it, and then I'm going to go for the long of it, as I normally do, because I appreciate your time, and I appreciate any time that you spend here. Short answer is, Furry in and of itself were not in the files. Thankfully, though the files in them themselves shouldn't exist, and people like that shouldn't exist to begin with. So it is like a hollow victory, as it were. And honestly, I would rather them not have to, the world not be the way that it is, rather than furries not be a part of it, as it were. And rather, the whole world as a whole be better. That being said, but we will cover, since I think inquiring minds would like to know and aren't as investigative as myself, or looking in through files and trying to tie together meaning and purpose with it. I did find some interesting things that I think people would be interested in, and just as I remember, my ears are too high, so some people don't like them that high, so I'm going to fidget with those while I'm fidgeting for the thing. So, next, what we're going to be talking about is... we're going to be talking about the Epstein files and whether Furry or not was in those things. The reality is that they were not. Now, there was an interesting post in there. There were 74 results. So let me bring up my stupid thing and let me stop fidgeting with my ears. That's going to be a new thing. I fidget with my ears constantly. Anyways... another quirk that you get to enjoy fun watching. Anyways, so this is the breakdown. There were 74 results when typing in the word furry. Now, I did try to look up some nefarious furs of interest as well, such as Kero the wolf, or just Kero. I didn't really find anything in that regard either. So even as nefarious as some certain furries are, I guess they weren't really tied. They weren't suspiciously wealthy enough to be tied with a billionaire in this way. Sarcasm and snarkiness aside, here's the breakdown that you can see on your screen. Now, 50% of them fall under what's called a duplicate/continuation element. And what those are is basically, so for duplicate slash continuation, what duplicative means is that it's an exact copy of another file that was in the results. So now there could be triplicates, there could be quadruplets. I think there was like one that was that was in there 5 times. A synctuplet or something. A lot of duplication, which obviously many people will note that the Department of Justice indicated that all the files are released, and all the files are released because, there were duplicates in there, and we just didn't want to waste your time with it. And the fact that just looking for something innocuous as furry got me results that had like a third of the results were files that were duplicate of another file. And by the way, I'm not counting both sides of the pair. If it were duplicated, so I'm going into the details here because the details are important. If there were 2 files that were exactly the same, I called one duplicate and I called one, and I categorized the other one. If there were 3 copies of the same file, I put one under the other topic that it would cover, and then 2 under duplicate, etc. So basically n minus 1. If there were n number of files in the files, right, I would subtract 1 from that and give that one the proper label, and then I would take what's left over and give it the duplicative thing. Continuation is similar. I would label and categorize the first one, and then continuation would be labeled as such. So what continuation is, it's similar to duplicate, only it's, if you're familiar with how emails work, if I type up an email and I put the word furry in it, right? And like someone responds to me, and my post and their response are both like separate files in this whole innocuous file thing, then that basically, it's basically the same information, the same, like this to the end user, to the person investigating, it's the same thing. You might as well take the one that's more conclusive, like has the most stuff in it. Like instead of just taking the individual replies to the thread, just take the whole thread and consume the whole thread, basically. And that is what happened here. So that's what the continuation is. And I wanted to separate those two things just so you know that I'm being what kind of like, oh, what did you count as a duplicate, Rue? Well, I counted exact copies of a file as a duplicate. If it was not an exact copy and it was a continuation of a conversation, I separated that into a separate category. And the reason I'm being this persnickety is because, as I said, the Justice Department, as I was starting to say, the Justice Department indicated that they had basically spared us the duplicates. And as we can see in here, that's absolutely untrue. The next thing is pejorative. So let me go to the most furry thing first. Adjective fandom-esque, which was one particular email. If you want to, if you don't want me to hear me ramble about this whole thing, there's actually a spreadsheet in the description below where you can go and peruse the files yourself. I put them all in a spreadsheet. You can click the links to find them, and there's like a short note description of what's going on in there. So if you don't want me yammering at you and you just don't want to listen to my pretty voice, which is fine, I can understand. It sounds awful because, you know, the whole like echoing thing. You can basically go there and find that. So, in that regard, the fandom-esque one was interesting in that Epstein was talking to some other person, but it was about a product. It was about, it was an innocent email exchange, you know, not really related to the case whatsoever, which, by the way, another theme that the Department of Justice indicated that they were done releasing the files is that, oh, well, the things that we didn't release were all just, like, not related to the case at all, which... if you didn't watch my previous video, go watch it. There's an example that was stated by one of the people of being involved in the investigation in their own way, a journalist for the Vanity Fair, who indicated that, you know, her interview with the FBI about her findings about Epstein's harm of the farmer girls in Ohio and her lead on that were not in the files, which is actually part of the case and is part of the files. So why were those excluded? And that kind of thing. But this kind of also proves the opposite, right? That they're not protecting us from redundant information or useless information, because this conversation about the fandom-esque adjective is also, and basically, but let me just spoil it here. Every single thing in this thing has nothing to do with the case. Except one, and one is kind of gray, which is, we'll go over that in a little bit. But everything else was like non sequitur, which basically means not related to the thing at hand. But it's like what I looked at and what I reviewed, just so I don't feel like I wasted my time, and you might be interested too. I just felt like sharing this. Enough disclaimers. Let's just get right to it. So the fandom-esque term was, they were like, one of them, I can't remember if it was Epstein or the person they were talking to, but one of them shared a product that they saw on the internet and was like earphones with cat ears on it. And they're like, look at these furry headphones. So that's as close as it gets to using furry to represent the fandom, which, interestingly, an adjective that now describes a characteristics of an object that indicates that it has like animal ears or animal content on it is interesting because like these people aren't furries and they're of the upper class and they're using the furry adjective. So congratulations, furries? Question mark. I really wish, there's probably other examples that we don't know about from more wholesome billionaires. Anyway, but like, yeah, so that's the only fandom-esque one. And as I said, and there's a link in the description, you can read those for yourself. There's only like 2 examples that I'm going to show screenshots of because I think they're pertinent or interesting. Adjective object, and also for your convenience, in the link to the description is a article that kind of lists this all out in written form, so you don't have to listen to me yammer if you don't like to. I don't know why I keep kicking myself, but I guess that's what kangaroos do. Anyways, adjective body. Like this goes into adjectives such as, his furry tummy or furry eyebrows or furry, like, so descriptions of basically body parts that are furry-esque. And the reason I separated out those from the other adjectives is because, most of those conversations were between consenting adults, but they were talking about people in somewhat salacious manners. And luckily it wasn't anybody who was being like, oh, I miss your fuzzy tummy, Epstein. Like there were definitely people who were, in a more consensual quid pro quo relationship with Mr. Epstein, and such as the monster that he probably is. They might have missed his fuzzy tummy, but his fuzzy tummy was a bit too busy not settling down in the worst of ways, as it were. So kind of cringe in that unfortunate way. Adjective object. These ones were basically furry slippers, furry coats. Oops, misclicked there. Sorry. Furry coats, furry slippers, furry, like, so just an adjective describing an object as furry, as in like it has fuzziness to it. So that one also not too much, like talking about like wearing fuzzy jackets to like Chicago in the winter, et cetera, et cetera. So typo is an interesting one, and this one kind of goes on a little, this one's going to go on for a little bit, but typo, so there was only one typo. So typo meaning like they typed the word furry was there, but they clearly didn't mean that. And interestingly, that one typo was repeated quite a bit, and it was from a Barnes & Noble order that Jeffrey Epstein did for the book by Mr. Wolf called Fire and Fury. Fire and Fury was released in early 2018. And the interesting thing about this, and that kind of like piqued, I was like a little curious, a little interesting to me, and nerding a little bit. So he didn't buy just one book, Mr. Epstein. He bought like 6 at least, according to those emails that I read. And so that's interesting to me because 2018 was Jeffrey Epstein's last year as a free man, basically. Trump's first term crackdown on him came down in mid 2018. So it's interesting to me because, obviously the Fire and Fury talked about the tumultuous, like first, the first term of Donald Trump's presidency, and like how like obviously he was like throwing out cabinet members left and right because he wants a bunch of yes men, and his kind of style of politics is not very like democratic, as it were. One could say it's kind of authoritarian. So he was like burning through people quite a bit. And, the book sort of goes over the good, the bad, and the ugly. And oh boy, was there a lot of ugly. And because of that, like obviously Trump didn't care for the book on the release and, talk smack about it as he normally does. And so what ended up happening is, like, to me, it's kind of weird that the FBI kind of had this like little order thing that Epstein did. It's like, hey, look, we have this information that he's like disseminating these books that you don't care about. maybe he's up to something, right? And that lingering of blackmail, as it were. It's like, is he trying to find weaknesses in the administration? And, who knows, right? And that's sort of the crazy thing about, this whole situation, or the whole thing, is that, the whole, like, did he get too close to the fire, and did he get caught by the fire and Fury himself? Who knows? But just an interesting little aside there. So next, synonyms for pets. Now this was obviously the most common of the non-duplicative things. Furry friends, furry family, you know it. So it's sort of adjective, I guess, but in a kind of sort of a way that it's like, it's used like as a noun and as an adjective at times to describe pets. So, I mean, I guess the animal ear thing could kind of fall into that, but I think it's more like animals, like a human product that has animal characteristics kind of makes it fandom-esque. So a lot of things about pets. Once again, non sequitur information. A lot of like Black Friday sales for your furry family. Here's a pet store brochure. Here's one that you receive on, November 30th, like December 1st, December 2nd. There was literally like 3 emails. I couldn't call them duplicates because they weren't the same freaking file, but it's the same freaking file sent to so basically it's just advertisements in his email being thrown at him, and then some reason they're in this thing. Also, there was about 3 or 4 accounting things from JP Morgan, from his JP Morgan account, showing him buying things from a New York City pet shop called Furry Paws. So, and I had to look up what Furry Paws was, and I'm like, is that Furry Paws? Uh-oh, is that a problem? And then like, nope, it's just just a pet store in New York City. So, also, another interesting one that kind of was like 2 of the files was like some sort of investor report from Blue Buffalo, which is a pet food thing. So he, like Jeffrey Epstein, apparently was an investor in Blue Buffalo pet food. And they would send him these things that would say like, oh, your pet and all this stuff. Now, the one interesting one that actually is tied to the files falls into this category, ironically, even though everything else is non sequitur. So what happened was, and this is an interesting one, so I'm going to go over it a little bit. Epstein had emailed himself a copy of a Daily Beast article about his run-in with the law in the middle of 2018. And as you can see, there's some redacted information. This was a screenshot from that file. But basically, there's a bunch of redacted information, right? But here's the thing. This was a public article. And the reason it showed up in the furry jurisdiction was because he copied like the whole webpage, as blundering as an old man that he is, a disgusting old man, but blundering like an old man as he is. He accidentally like copied and printed out a copy of every article on the thing. And one of them happened to be about replacing your furry family with robots. Welcome to the modern we're. Like, hey, pet's too expensive for you? How about a robot pet? ... I mean, you get entertained by animals on their machines all the time. Let's not face facts, my audience. But I think not. Like the whole thing, like robots aren't warm. Like you gotta be able to hug, and like you gotta be able to like embrace and hug and like have like and feel that connection and that the heartbeats and things like that. That's that platonic connection that you get with a pet. You can't replace that with a robot. Sorry, off on that tangent. But the cool thing about this interesting blunder of Mr. Epstein's is I could actually review what the government redacted on this file. And you're like, oh gosh, he did it. Yeah, I went to Daily Beast. I didn't have an account. I needed an account to view that file. And for the first time in my entire career, in my entire furry career, I paid for normie news. I'm like, sure, I want to throw you $1? I want to see this because this is actually could be revealing information. Good on the government, though. One rare thing to say, that this case, I think they did a good job. They redacted what needed to be redacted. Though ironically, like, this is a public-facing article, so these are public-facing victims anyway. They had like Giraffe Farmer, who I discussed earlier with the Vanity Fair thing, and they're publicly out. Sarah Ransome was a victim, but they're publicly out because, as I said, this is from that publicly facing article. All you gotta do is pay $1 and you can see it. One interesting one that they redacted, though, was Nadia Markinkova. That one is a victim ? But kind of an accomplice. And this is where sort of the morally gray thing comes into play. She was the pilot for Epstein's jet. She was, I think, it's basically stated she's just, no one knows where she is right now. She's a missing person, and which is concerning, obviously, given the circumstances. But basically, there's rumored that she was obviously helping Epstein traffic these individuals in these planes. But at the same time, she was like taken from a young age from her country of origin by Mr. Epstein to be a pilot for him. So she was groomed in essence. So victim / so, I mean, given it's a gray area, you kind of go, okay, that's fine. I guess I'll give it to them. So, because I'm not giving them much credit on other things in this video, so I might as well give them credit there. That's fine. So the redactions were good. That file was appropriate, and it was in context. The one file of the entire thing I reviewed, of the entire 74, this one is in scope. The victims' names were redacted appropriately. There was no non-needed redactions. Mwah! Chef's kiss. If every file was like this, no problems. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And we're going to go over one more after this. One more thing for the files that was interesting in sort of an unfortunate way. So, the last thing, pejorative. There were two. And this one's interesting, and also probably the most disturbing thing. So obviously, disclaimers: if you don't care for people in power acting a jerk and being a jerk, now there's no worries. There's no SVU kind of issues here. It's more racism and xenophobia and sort of kind of things. Pejorative meaning furry, using as an adjective to dehumanize a human being. Now, I write about this in the article in a certain way, and I'm going to present it here in that same way. Interestingly, the two results, one was a sort of a scientific book, pseudoscience kind of, but it was supposed to, it's called a book called Evolution. And apparently in the Epstein files, an entire copy of that book can be found. So if you want Evolution for free, you know where to go. It's there for your perusing. Reading the prologue of the thing, it sounds like it's like, oh, well, what proclives mankind to move towards evil, right? To what sort of evolutionary properties do we have as animals that kind of what sort of byproducts linger in the DNA of humankind that causes proclivity towards evil action. Now, obviously, the author portrays it as sort of a view on it in like not as a guide, but as a sort of a curiosity, right? And trying to make sense of evil in a way. Now, obviously, where I found the file doesn't do it any favors. It's like, yeah, it's not a how-to guide, Mr. Epstein, really. No, it's not a how-to guide. But unfortunately, that's where I found it. So, first impressions where I found it, not great. Sorry, Mr. Author of Evolution. It's Evolution, by the way. It's Evolution. Evil. Evil, not evil. Yeah, it was a purposefully play on words. It was a good title. It's like it's a good title. I can spin a good title just as much as anyone. But in the third chapter, The word furry only occurs once in the book, and it has to do with xenophobia, and basically using the adjective furry to describe people in a way that animalizes them, that dehumanizes them in order for, people to do evil unto others. And that basically is, that describes this second one to a T, as if on cue. It's like, can you give us an example, evolution? Oh, we don't need one. There's another one in the files. And this is that example. The second pejorative in this pie chart, and I'm going to read this one fully, or not fully, but at least to the part where you get this thing here, was from a redacted person, which is interesting because there is absolutely no reason that this should be redacted unless, the powers that be are trying to blackmail someone saying, hey, we have this file on you that's kind of tied to the Epstein files. If you open your damn mouth, we're going to post who you are. Wink, wink kind of thing. That's what it just feels like to me. It's like this is A, non sequitur. B, that name shouldn't be redacted, right? Those are two violations of the rule. But it was from December 2010. A long time ago. I was a fledgling back then. So this letter starts with this. Hello all. Some nasty Emirati kids on mini motorcycles foamed my car due to National Day. I slammed the brakes in an attempt to make one of them go flying into my car. Disappointingly, he dodged my car. He would have been hurt since none of them was wearing protection or a helmet. You may ask why one would want to hurt a kid. Oh, it's a lot more fun than it sounds. You should try it. Don't take this out of context. This is a quote. And then he puts in parentheses, and I'm assuming it's a he. Oh, stop. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to do in the desert, so we take whatever entertainment we can get. Even if it involves hurting small furry animals like Arab children. So that's where the word furry comes to play. But I would never hurt an animal. They are real creatures. You should see what I do in Saudi for fun. So, the company he keeps, it's almost as bad as the person himself. So, A, why is that person redacted? That person's not unless that person's a victim of Epstein, which I highly doubt given like the tone of the letter and like how abusive this individual is to other people. Talking about vehicular manslaughter and having fun with attempted vehicular manslaughter. The thing is, like, I could make a guess a little bit or like some sort of guess on the person that it is from or is around. There was a person named Mr. Prince, Eric Prince, who was the leader of Blackwater. Was this like CEO of Blackwater back during the Bush administration? That individual ran away, basically fled the country to the United Arabic Emirates, the UAE, because UAE doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States. So basically, in order to flee the assumed prosecution that he was going to get for his mercenary work during the Bush administration, he fled there. And there's a link to the Al Jazeera article in the article that I listed there below. And so that's, it's possible it's him or someone like related to him, or it could be anybody else. I don't know. It's redacted. That's just an educated guess. So probably a 60%, 40% chance of it being wrong. But, obviously there is some public history of Eric Prince's sort of proclivities towards ethnocentrism. So, if the shoe fits, kind of fits, but you can't make accusations like that without actually knowing the name, which shouldn't have been redacted. But to be fair, that email shouldn't have been in the files either because it has nothing to do with the Epstein case. as horrible and as awful as it is, it's not related. So I don't know if they snuck it in there on purpose for whatever means. Maybe it's like, and you never, once again, you can never, know motive. Like, are they trying to blackmail whoever was redacted there, or is it just a random file, just like all these other random files that were kind of thrown out there? Again, don't know. But that was the things that I found. One of the funny things also, as a final note, took me a few hours to get that information together and to read through all the different files and like read through it, make sure it was and categorize it. It took a few hours. Interestingly, as time went on and I kept doing that, I kept getting the pop-up like, are you not a robot? 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 I know I act like one. I know I can be similar robot-esque. I can be pretty robot-esque when I get into my like researching things, but like you don't have to flatter me. DOJ website, you don't have to flatter me. Anyways, that's what I found. Fortunately for us furries, nothing in there regarding us. Hopefully nobody was involved in that and they just happened to be in those files. Like, obviously you always got to be vigilant. Bad people can show up anywhere, and as Vanity Fair learned, sometimes you'll point your nose in the wrong direction, as we discussed last time. But fortunately for us, that's where it was in the files for Furry. Anyways, that was a waste of everyone's time. back to commiserating. Anyways, have a good one, guys. See you next time.